It's time for Drummer Nation. My guest is the New York-based drummer Billy Ward. Billy has toured or recorded with B.B. King, Robbie Robertson, Carly Simon, The Knack, Joe Sample, Rick Springfield, and David Crosby. He's played on over 50 movie soundtracks, including That Thing You Do, Under Siege, and Sister Act. He's released several records as a leader in 2 highly acclaimed instructional videos. Billy also works as a producer and engineer in his private studio, Drum Pike, and continues to teach private students, drum clinics, and master classes. My interview with Billy Ward after this. Sound Synergy's percussion care lubricants and conditioners include a series of 3 products for total drum kit care and maintenance. Percussion care products in your gig bag ensures your entire kit will always look and sound its best. Check out their website at soundsynergies.net.
I absolutely love playing drums, and I couldn't imagine not having that in my life. And I really, if I could help facilitate that and have an impact on your life so that you can play drums, that means the world to me.
Hi, this is Stanton Moore. I've been playing and teaching drums for over 30 years. My new site, Stanton Moore Drum Academy, is the perfect online drum learning platform for any level drummer to learn how to play the drums the same way I did. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you as subscribers on the site, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
Hi, this is Michael Vosbein, your host for Drummer Nation, and I do the show as a labor of love, but I could use a little help. If you'd like to be a patron of the show, please go to the site patreon.com/DrummerNation. Help us out. Thanks. Welcome to Drummer Nation. My guest for today is great drummer Billy Ward. Thank you for doing my show, Billy. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Michael, I'm really good, man. Thank you. Like most people on the planet, I'm just getting over, I hope I'm getting over the flu, cold, whatever that's been going around. But I'm great.
Oh, well, you look good. That's, you know, I don't. You wouldn't remember me from then, but I was at North Texas State when you were. Were you a student there or just bopping around?
Well, I took a couple of classes and quit right away because I felt like I knew everything. I wanted to just be in that environment. You know, a lot of people that age think they know everything. So yeah, but I lived there a few years, and it was a great time to play with people and explore being selfish on drums.
Well, you were the hip cat that everybody knew about who wasn't in the school but was around, and I used to go hear you play at some funky bars and stuff around there, and we were all mesmerized, man. Back then, you were a monster, and I heard a lot of Elvin in your playing, and just realized reading your bio that you studied with Elvin.
Well, yeah, I had one lesson with him. I booked an hour, and we lasted about 5 hours or so, mostly just visiting with each other as people. And it was great. And yeah, he really, when you heard me then, that was just within a couple of years of my lesson with Elvin. I guess I was probably 17 when I had that lesson. Mm-hmm. And so he just, kind of blew me away. And so, I became Elvin as best I could. I was just so into him. And, that's what we do when we're young. I mean, it's important. And not imitating our favorites, I believe, is not to be feared for any drummer, young or old or beginning or advanced. I think it's, you can never become them as much as you might try, but you do get to add that influence to your musical suitcase, is what I call it, and that's pretty neat.
Well, it wasn't an insult at all. I love Elvin. He's probably my favorite drummer of all time, and to hear that sort of channeled from a young drummer like that was just thrilling. So what can you give us any insight of what a lesson with Elvin may have been? I mean, I know it's mostly visiting, mostly learning about each other as people, but is there something he laid on you you want to relay?
Well, he was the most amazing thing was just who he was as a person. I'm this kid from Ohio in New York City for the first time because I met Mel Lewis, and he's like, "Oh, you got to go to New York and get your K's and tell him I sent you and all that," So there I am in Frankie Polito's, and I can have a lesson with Elvin. So I booked it, and at the very beginning, as I'm entering to go up this tiny hallway to this incredibly small closet that had a drum set and room for a folding chair in front of it, and that was it. Another older, taller, intimidating young man said that he couldn't get a lesson to have with Elvin, and could he just share it with me, and then he'd pay for the whole lesson. And I, Ohio again, wanting to please everybody, I didn't know what to say. And Elvin goes, well, I think this young man has arranged a private lesson with me, and if you'd like to have a lesson and study with me, you should just make an appointment for another time. He was always such a gentleman, and maybe one of the first rules of being a teacher, he was protective of me. And because God knows he's used to students kind of quivering, guys like that, Tony and Elvin and whatnot, would be used to seeing people being a little anxious to begin a lesson with them.
Hey everybody out there in cyber world, this is Adam Nussbaum.
Hi, Dave DeCenzo here.
Hi, Bermuda Schwartz here.
Hey everyone, Stanton Moore here.
Hey guys, Johnson Pesta here.
Hey everybody, this is John J.R. Robinson.
Hi, Todd Zuckerman here for the Drum Center of Portsmouth. They're knowledgeable, they'll be able to help you and guide you and make the right choices for you and the music that you play.
From Wingnut to Wuhan, these chaps know what they're talking about. Highly recommended. But what do I know? I'm a drummer.
So that's how it started, and of course then we went through the usual, why don't you play something, and then I'm going, I don't know what to play, and then Mr. Meek all of a sudden, and then he goes, well, are you in a band? Yes. We'll play something from your band. So I played something from the band, and he's the thing he threw at me was dynamics, that I needed to have more dynamics. And I think that's true for probably any 17-year-old. I had chops and I could get around, but I really didn't have as much music happening as I could. I had more notes than music. And so then he sat down and played. And that's what killed me. All of a sudden, I couldn't believe the expression that he was doing on this drum set, and looking at me the whole time, like, you got that, and then you got this, and this is how we can play expressively with dynamics. And so on a musical level, that's really what the lesson was about. We later turned into all kinds of just social talk about black and white issues back then, and because I was from Cincinnati and there had been riots in Cincinnati in the '68, and we just hung out. I had a Heineken with him, and it was really nice for somebody like anybody. That was great. I was very, very lucky.
Well, that's a great story. I'm glad you have that. I always think, not to dwell too much on Elvin, but I always think of his time feel as being distinctively different than anybody else's. I know you're an educator. I haven't put this out there, but I have an idea that, let's say the jazz ride pattern, there might be three, I think of it in three types of. One is slight emphasis on 2 and 4, ding-a-ding, ding-a-ding, ding-a-ding. Shelley, Mel, Jeff Hamilton. Another one might be quarter note emphasis, ding, 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 more driving, like maybe Buddy Erskine plays that way, I think. And then I think of Elvin's comping as a different way of more like comping with the ride cymbal, da, da, ga-ding, gang, gang, ding, da, da, ding, and then all the stuff fills in underneath it. Is there any validity to that?
Well, yeah, I think he freed things up more so than those who had been before him. The main thing about the time is that he's quite elastic with it.
Sound Synergy's Percussion Care lubricants and conditioners include a series of 3 products for total drum kit care and maintenance. Pedal Lube, the only product specifically designed for bass drum, hi-hat pedals, and triggers, as well as all moving metal parts and drum hardware, safely removes grit, grime, and other contaminants while protecting against harmful friction wear. Cymbal Care restores and conditions cymbal surfaces without strippers or harmful polishes. Wear Barrier is a conditioning formula for all drum heads, rims, and even sticks. Percussion Care products in your gig bag ensures your entire kit will always look and sound its best.
In general, with jazz, the flow is more important than the time, the actual timing. Like metronomic timing is less important than having a flow or a groove that's consistent.
Right.
And that's the so the thing about Elvin is he's just kind of sneaky that way. There might be some extra notes in there, like groups of 5 16th notes instead of 4 in the space of 4 16th notes or things like that. His gyroscope is hits in larger doses, but I always felt even before that lesson, I did this. One of my instructional videos is Voices in My Head, and one of the things I touch on that is sort of like the history of jazz drummers, and in a nutshell, it was in the beginning, it was really just dun 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 on the snare drum and then the bass drum, and things got more melodic with some drummers and whatnot, and Elvin just kind of took it. He released the hi-hat from being a part of the ride cymbal. Everything just got released. And so, in a way, he played jazz the way Keith Moon played rock. He just went. And, in Keith's case, most people say flailed. I wouldn't say that with Elvin. But I love both of those guys a lot. And because it's just the wild gypsy abandonness of their playing, and commitment. Elvin had a commitment and a skill to concentrate on the music as he played, and that still stays with me every time I hear him. It's like, wow.
Yeah, it's a force of nature with him. Let's do some of your early history. Where are you from, Cincinnati?
Yes.
How did you get started? Did you have a great teacher as a kid, or?
I had apparently the best teacher, because my hands have never been a problem, and I have at least a 50% ratio of drummers who come to me because they're in pain or unhappy with their grip, and so my teacher was Jack Volk, V-O-L-K, and he was the one professional drummer in Cincinnati, Ohio. He played a live TV show 5 days a week and had a band, like a casual band, club date we call them, and so he had a band and they did probably weddings and crap like that. Right. But he had the steady gig. He was a Rogers artist. His picture was in the catalog. He knew Louis Bellson and Roy Burns, and I thought he was just amazing. He was a stickler for rudiments and reading and grip and the whole thing, and so he was my teacher until I was a sophomore in high school or so, 16, and I kind of petered out from studying with him, and that was it. I was just playing in bands a lot, 5 nights a week, whatnot, doing some recording, and then
that's leading into my next question. So you started gigging at a young age, and how did you get rolling as a professional before moving away?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're playing with people, and so like I'm playing in a softball game, and the guy who was in the YMCA concert band asked me to play in his band, and also I start playing right away. Like in 6th grade, I was playing with guys that were just out of high school or in the upper high school level, and of course to me they were like really ancient and wise, and they were really awesome players. I remember one friend, John Mooter, gave me in 6th grade a record of Charlie Parker with strings, and a Jerry Mulligan record, and a J.J. Johnson record. He played trombone, and things like that, and just kept opening me up, and I was in the 6th grade. I was just figuring out how to do quarter note triplets over the jazz ride pattern in the Chapin book, basically. But my ears were getting exploded from that, plus the scene in Cincinnati was so musical, with James Brown recording there, and so that whole scene was very prevalent. That style of playing. You know, you did James Brown songs, and of course whatever else was on the radio.
My new site, Stanton Moore Drum Academy, is the perfect online drum learning platform for any level drummer to learn how to play the drums the same way I did, with the advantage of having me road test the material on hundreds of stages, countless clinics, lessons, and master classes, and dozens of studio sessions every year. On the site, you'll find over 13 hours of video, dozens of written lessons, and fresh material gets added all the time. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you as subscribers on the site, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
So you were getting hip to the jazz thing, but you were also heavily rooted in contemporary pop and funk of the time.
Yeah, I was very much so, you know, like I bought a Sun Ra record the same time I bought After Bathing at Baxter's by Jefferson Airplane. You know, it's always been, I've always been interested in what else, you know. And it's a risk, you know. I bought a Grady Tate record and was crushed when I found out he was singing and not playing drums.
He was a great singer, though.
And at that age, though, I could give a crap about singers. Now I'll buy records because of a voice. But when you're that age, you know, it's just chops, and you just every color is brighter when you're a youngster.
Yeah, but you can't listen to Interstellar Space all the time.
Space is the place, baby.
Space is the place. I saw Sun Ra live. I loved it, man.
Me too, several times. I would have loved to have played with him, only they all seemed quite scary to me.
Yeah.
Again, the Ohio thing, maybe, but so.
So you moved eventually. Well, you went to North Texas, and then did you go to New York from there?
Yeah. Well, first, actually, I stayed in Cincinnati and went to the Conservatory of Music at the University of Cincinnati for about a year and a half. And that was really just to stay within my local band, but a lot of good things happened from that. In my private lessons, I studied this Hinger touch tone for timpani, and it really has stuck with me. It's really it's a great way to get a beautiful tone out of an instrument, you know, whether it be drum or cymbal. So I still use that, and that I'm grateful for that knowledge and experience. And then, yeah, a friend I was playing with, jazz trumpet player, he was at North Texas. He was in the 1 o'clock. Come on down. So I went down, you know, and again, I just was so headstrong, you know. Part of me wishes I'd stuck with school and gone through the whole thing, but I didn't. And I peeled away. I went to Oregon and I had a jazz gig, a trio jazz gig up there. Then I came back to Texas. Eventually, I came to New York. So.
And just moved in and started looking for work. Did you contact other drummers?
Yeah, I thought I had a gig from a tape that I'd done in Texas, maybe something like you heard. It was a bass and drums concert. And but when I got there, I didn't have a gig. So, you know, I just had to manage. And it's always a shock. And it was a shock. And so I did some gigs, some great gigs, some awful gigs. I was a house band for a wedding place they were all mobsters basically. And I mean, seriously, there are stories that if I told you, I don't know what would happen to me, but
don't tell.
You know, and there's some other notable musicians who were in those bands, and every time we see each other, we kind of laugh and hug and confirm, yes, that's right, that really happened. You know, so you know, there's that. It's interesting.
But you made it. You made it through. You did what you needed to do to make a living and to keep surviving. And eventually,
well, that's it.
How did you break into the scene?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I really did. I break into the scene. I don't know if I did. You know, I really wanted to play jazz in New York, but it just didn't feel like it was available to me, and so I started working some more popular music gigs, and '79 or '8, I started working with a guy named Dean Friedman, and that was the first big budget record I made. With him, we did it up at my studio in Warren Heights, Canada, and that's where and doing these gigs with him, it was like, yeah, you go into a song and 3,000 people are excited, and that's compared to doing a jazz gig, and I was leaning towards the more modern things, where even on the bandstand, is there agreement on whether we're any good or not, or whether this is a good moment? So it was easy for me to accept the idea of putting on like a pop music suit and playing that. What I found out was that there's a big difference in time and feel between jazz and rock. With jazz, as I referred to before, you can change the tempo or different things, but you don't want to change the feeling. And in rock or popular music, you're pouring cement for a building that's got to stand. And so you can change the feel. You can go to reggae on the bridge, but it's got to stay right there. And it took me, I just had to put myself back through school on my own to learn how to do that, with a lot of appreciation for the drummers in that genre that I listened to at the time, with a new appreciation. And
that's a very good point. I did an interview with Steve Smith recently for Classic Drummer magazine, and he talks quite a lot about that. He freely admits being fired from Journey because and he was an established jazz player, a monster player, but it turned into lots of sequencers and clicks and metronomic perfection that nobody had been used to playing prior to that. So when you were going through that, it was at a time when kind of everybody did that. What were some of the keys to getting comfortable in those styles?
Absolutely. I think for me, playing along to George Benson records with Harvey Mason really, getting my Harvey on really helped me a lot. And of course Steve went through that. We all kind of did, I think. But in the end, there's look at Steve. There's another drummer that really just plays properly, is so well taught, and executes so beautifully, and wow. I mean, he just keeps going and going. It's amazing. He's so good.
Well, you have those things in common of coming from a jazz background. Now, today, still, when you play jazz, do you make that mindset difference of this can float? Or does the jazz stuff gets more locked in too, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, my stomach is more involved when I play now. Anything as far as like when you walk down a dark street and you kind of feel in your stomach it's not cool maybe to be there. Sometimes musically I feel that way. So that's why I say in my stomach. It's just an overall, now why did you start this crap? So I try to like back out of it and go
bow out gracefully, find something else. It's jazz. Now I'm looking at some of your.
Do that. I didn't really mean to do it.
Yeah, sorry guys. I'm looking at your resume here with some of the people you play with: B.B. King, Robbie Robertson, and from the band, Carly Simon, The Knack, Yoko Ono. This is Joan Osborne. It's a big variety of stuff. How'd you get involved in those? Working with those kind of acts, I guess you want to call them, coming from a jazz background?
Well, in most cases, they didn't know I had any jazz background, and that's always kind of good to not let them know that. But really, honestly, you get work from the people you're playing with now. People that are in school now, music school, or studying, and concerned with their future. How can I get the big gig? Well, the big gig is coming to you from the people you're playing with right now. And some of them will get better. And some of them will then champion you and recommend you. And that's how I got these gigs. I mean, different people recommended me. In some cases, it's somebody who just wants to play with me. I got a Rick Springfield gig. The bass, they were doing open auditions. Bass player wouldn't even audition with another drummer. He had to audition with me. And as a result, later I got the gig and he didn't. And they said it was because he was such a, DICK about not willing to play with any other drummers, even though they thought he was the best bass player.
Oh, that's
so there's always that, a lot of work. Gary Chang is a film composer that when I moved to LA through a guitarist friend in New York, Kurt Neisloss, he recommended me to Gary. He had been doing Gary's work. All of a sudden, Gary loved me, and I ended up doing more than 50 films with him. And he had worked with Robbie Robertson, and he called Robbie up and just said, I got this drummer from New York, and you really should check him out. And so that's what happened there.
That was your move to L.A.?
I'm sorry, repeat?
That was your move to Los Angeles?
Well, the move to L.A. happened kind of gradually with, I had a friend who had done the Brothers in Arms tour with Dire Straits, Jack Sawney, and he wanted to form a band, like Bowie kind of a band, like Lodger. And so we were excited about that, and I went out there. Of course, it failed because the singer blew it all up, very familiar thing, and came back. But then someone had heard me. What was it? Oh, no, then the bass player from that project, that's when Rick Springfield happened. Then that tour got canceled. I came home. But then a producer making a record, Mark Jordan record, called me, and I went out to do that. And then Gary, it's just little threads kept pulling me back. And so for a while, I was in a little tiny apartment and keeping the New York City home and seeing if I can get work before my MasterCard runs out of money. And, one thing did lead to another, and that's how I started working in L.A.
Well, it sounds to me, if you were talking to a young drummer now, you would recommend dogged determination.
There's no doubt about that, because, first of all, let's look at this. We're trying to get paid for things that other people do for fun in their free time. So whatever gig you have, there are musicians that would kill their mothers and drink her blood to have your gig. So there's that. It's like, my favorite joke about this,
please,
if you'll let me, is a woman in a bar comes up to a guy and goes, for $200 I'll do anything you want. And he goes, okay, paint my house. See, nobody wants to be a roofer,
right?
Or a house painter.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they want to tour with some hot band, and get lots of women. So yeah, that's pretty. Of course, you have to really dig in, and you have to, and it's hard. And the only thing you have to arm yourself with is the knowledge that you really are good. And a lot of people don't study themselves hard enough and judge themselves harshly enough to know that they really are playing their little butt off. Mm-hmm. And then it's that, and you got to be a good person. You got to be somebody that, as Bill Champlin says, somebody that gives good bus, somebody that you can stand being on the bus with. Because if you can't, that guy's not going to get any work, or gal. They're not going to work.
Very good point. Very good point. It's a matter of can everybody get along off the bandstand as well. I know some bands where they tour and they each have their own bus because they can't get along.
How about their own tour manager?
Yeah, well,
won't name names, but
no, we
yes.
won't. It gets crazy. Early in your career, you began becoming involved with engineering and producing.
Yes.
Very comfortable in the studio. Whereas for years, many drummers looked at that as somebody else's gig.
Yes. Well, my interest in engineering was, in the beginning, when you're doing records, you go, why do I sound great? Why do the drums sound good here and not sound good there? So I started hanging out in the control room with engineers and tried to ask appropriate questions that wouldn't disturb their workflow and just pick people's brains. And a lot of guys were really open to me. about that. You know, Gary Chang's engineer, Brian Reeves, awesome guy. He did all the Giorgio Moroder stuff, Donna Summers. He was mixing these 100-piece orchestras with drums and electric guitars and everything for Gary's soundtracks. Guy was great. He was awesome as a teacher. Ed Cherney, when I did the Knack record, I was like following him around like a puppy. You know, because you do the drum track and you're done. And so I was just, why are you doing this? What's that? What's that? What's that? And he was great, the Reverend Ed. And I've had people like that. And when I came back to New York, people that I had been working with in LA all said, hey man, you know, just get yourself some Pro Tools or something and buy some mic pre's and some mics and we can still work together. And so I did. And at the time I was touring with Chris Whitley and I was asking house engineers at each venue what they thought I should get. That what I wanted was a Neve, but one that won't break. And because they're fussy and old. So at the time, they all pretty much said Day-King. I ended up meeting Jeff Day-King, and I bought his mic pre's and compressors, and turns out he was a drummer. A lot of great producers are drummers, you know, and he engineered all kinds of great things, and he was the drummer in the Blues Magoos. We ain't seen nothing yet. You ain't seen nothing yet. Da, 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 da. Anyway, so that's what got me started, and from then out, it's just been a learning party, you know, of learning how to not have phase problems and learning where to put the mics. And I'm very confident now with what I can do with my studio or in a studio with other instruments. So it's pretty neat. It's enjoyable. It's like being a cameraman.
You would recommend that to young players, that they become knowledgeable about production to some degree?
Well, nobody's going to do it for you anymore, right. The way things are. And yes, I would recommend having something to, you know, not to sound like a parent, but something to fall back on first. But if you refuse to have something to fall back on, I recommend doing like videos. Learn how to be a film director, because then you get knowledge of everything, and then from there you can branch out. But what do I know?
You know a lot, and that's why we're talking to you. Now you have some solo albums out. Tell me about those.
Well, the first one, Two Hands Clapping, is live duets in the studio. The template was, here I've worked with and know these great musicians, and I know how great they are. The idea was to put a challenge in front of them that was harder or better than and have it done by means of having no one else there. So it's a live recordings with no overdubs, no repairs, with Bill Champlin, who wrote After the Love Is Gone. He was in Chicago forever. People my age know him from the Sons of Champlin. Sure. And he's just one of my favorite. I love this guy so much. And many others. When I was out with Chris Whitley, we toured with Toad the Wet Sprocket and their singer Glenn Phillips. I did a duet with him. Chris Whitley, a couple of songs. Joy Askew, Jim Beard, who I knew from the Bill Evans supergroup that I was in before I went to LA. And so, like, it was really neat doing this. And the handicap being, as a drummer, it's not just playing a beat. When there's no bass or anything, it's like maybe use a bigger bass drum, maybe think about sounds, you know, like with Glenn Phillips, I did a song with my hands and little thingies, you know, and so that was that record. And the next one was just, you know, like 10 years later, and now that was 10 years ago, so we're due for another one. That was more of a jazz trio. There's this guitarist who also went to North Texas State, as you did, Barry Coates, and he's just got these great songs, and before I left LA, I had been jamming with him and Bill Urmson, who recommended me to the George Russell orchestras. And so I got to work with George for years, thanks to Bill's recommendation. So Bill, Barry, and I made that record 10 years ago, the little jazzy guitar record. And we're due for another one. We'll see, hopefully maybe this year if we can get it together. We don't live together. We're like spread out across the
You live in Los Angeles now?
I'm in New York.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, I live in New York. Barry's in L.A. and Bill Urmson, the bass player, lives in Boston area. So we're a little stretched out here.
Now, we also have to talk about you as an educator. You have some great materials out there. A couple of DVDs or books, or how are they available now?
Well, I'm working on something online as far as Big Time because I own it and made it and did the whole thing, and I'm working on getting it released maybe as part of a package. I haven't sorted it out. I can't really say yet. And let's face it, I'm not that good. I'm not a great businessman. But yes, they're all available. There's Big Time, which is about timing. And if you don't know, is it me or the bass player, or why does the singer hate me? All that kind of stuff. Why did I just get fired? Mm-hmm. You need Big Time.
So it's not a method book.
No. Well, it's a video. Right. It's an instructional video. And it's an entertaining video also.
But it's about survival as a drummer, not really right hand, left hand, bass drum.
It's about what you need to keep a gig, to get a gig and keep a gig in popular music, and everybody loved it. I mean, I met people. Simon Phillips sent me a sweet note. Vinny said, well, if I were to make one, I'd want it to be like that, and all that kind of stuff. It was really nice to get that kind of response. Bill Bruford, many people were so nice to me as a result of that film. And then the other one, Voices in My Head, has not sold as much or won the awards that Big Time has won, but I think probably because it says it's about jazz, but really it's about jazz and how it applies again to the real world, because I'm in the real world. I'm not playing jazz gigs, but if I'm doing Purdy, I'm influenced. He loved Elvin, and so Purdy's coming from Elvin, and if Bonham's coming from Purdy, then there's Elvin everywhere, and it's like that, and those techniques are worth those, not just techniques, because that sounds surfacey, those influences in terms of their musical choices as well as the physical, how did they do it, those things are worth having in your suitcase that you can bring out for this song, and so that's what that one is, and that's called Voices in My Head, and they're both available everywhere.
I confess I haven't seen them, but I want to. I'm going to look them up.
That's okay. You're probably a busy guy.
No, I want to learn them. I want to see them. What's up now for you?
Well, more teaching than anything. I went through a period where I didn't work. My wife took ill after I did a MD Fest in 2008, and she was sick for 2 years and died of leukemia. And I really kind of just launched into the abyss for a few years. And I'm coming back now, and I am remarried and happy and feeling lucky. But it's, I'm no spring chicken. Do I want to be on a bus with grown men and hold the singer's hand again? I don't think so. So I'm sorting out how I can best do it. And my website has an interesting questionnaire for people that might, if they want to study with me. And regretfully, I haven't gotten back to one of them, and I owe them all contact. And I'm hoping that this month, in March, now, I will contact them all. But it's a long list of people that are interested, and I want to sort out a way, because Michael, it's an incredible feeling to influence someone. And I have students that, my favorite students are ones that already have a big gig. They just feel they want to get released more in creative things, and that's my shit, So I can share that, techniques I have for that, and like how to practice in a more creative way that's more inspiring and stuff. And so that's what I'm hoping to do, is do more of that. I do have my studio. I do work for clients, and of course it's not work. It's joyful, right. And just I almost missed our appointment today because I got a new mic pre and I'm enjoying it and I'm checking out it with it on snare drum and like, oh my God. And so it's like that for me. I mean, it's like a wonderland. Instead of an 8-year-old, I guess, had maybe a train set or cars or something. For me at this point, it's microphones and mic pre's. And of course, for all of us drummers, it's snare drums. And for me, it's tambourines and shakers and anything that rattles. And so it's very interesting,
Well, it always was for you. Going back to when I first heard you play in the early 70s in North Texas, I remember you had an original hi-hat pedal a low-hat pedal, you had something that was just on the floor like that. It didn't come up.
With war helmet cymbals, yes.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And all kinds of accoutrements and effects and percussion cymbals. So you
a lot of, I was really into the whole Afro jazz thing, the Pharoah Sanders, and so I had a lot of those bells and things. I was really, really into the whole African thing that was happening then. And so, yeah, a lot of I did some, I can't believe I ever did solo drum concerts, but I did back then. And a lot of times they were based on a lot of those types of influences, the African thing, jazz, Afro jazz, I don't know what. Anyway.
I seem to remember you coming out from behind the kit and playing these things were around here, and then you go back to the kit and play. And
really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you did. It's a long time ago. Anyway, it's not a long format. We've come to about the end of the time, but I sure do appreciate your interview, man. And you're such an inspiring cat. I'm very sorry to hear about the death of your wife, your first wife.
Okay,
and you're such an inspiring cat in that you just take on the adversity and keep moving forward. That's what we all have to do, right?
Yes, it is. Yes,
and
it is.
I'm going to check out your videos and continue to be inspired by you. Thank you so much, Billy, for being my guest.
Okay, please mention my website. Okay, it's billyward.com.
We'll put it in the notes and on the screen.
Okay.
Take care,
Michael,
brother.
Thank you, man.
You're most welcome. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. This is your host, Michael Vosbine, and I'd like to thank our friends at Sabian Cymbals, Sound Synergies, Stanton Moore Drum Academy, and Drum Center of Portsmouth. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.